Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Uncommon Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Apprille. All of our episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can follow us on YouTube at Uncommon Comedy Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at Uncommon Comedy. You can also follow us on Instagram at Uncommon Comedy Tour. Today's guest is a very, very funny comedian. He performs all over the world. Has the, I think, third highest or most popular dry bar comedy special in history. Just put out a new special called Modern Male, and just really, really funny. And I'm super excited to get a chance to talk to him because we don't get a chance to talk much. So please welcome the very funny Zoltan Kaszas, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, Zoltan?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the very nice introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. One of the things that I love about your act, and I'm really excited about this because, we've talked about bits, we've done a bunch of shows together. We've talked about a couple of jokes here or there, and we've talked about the dry bar here or there, but I've never really gotten a chance to talk and get to know you a little bit and know a little bit about your comedy process. So I'm really excited to do this. One of my favorite things about you, though, is the ease of which you are on stage. You're always writing. You have this great personality, and you come up with so much material so quickly, and you're just super, super funny. I remember when I first heard of you, everyone was like, they'd say, who's the funniest person, in town? And everyone was like, Zoltan. And of course, being a comedian, I'm like, who's this Zoltan guy?
I've met a lot of people that come in with the arms folded, and I'm like, hey, I don't have to be your favorite. I have no control over anyone saying anything.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you. You're very humble. You're very low ego, very whatever. And then I saw you perform, and I was like, oh, this dude's great. So
Thanks,
I really love being on shows with you and watching you perform. It's the way you work is a really great thing. So let's talk a little bit about you for a bit. What inspired you, or who inspired you to start doing stand-up?
The first stand-up special I ever watched was Sinbad, Afros and Bell Bottoms. There was a time in the late 90s where Comedy Central would play that special on a loop. You could turn it on anytime and it would be on there. And I watched it with my mom, and I was like, this is great. I actually did my first ever stand-up set. I was 12. And it was end of the year awards ceremony at my middle school, and I did 5 minutes of Sinbad at the end. I didn't know you couldn't do other people's jokes,
right?
Because I was 12, and so I did 5 minutes of Sinbad and killed, of course, because Sinbad's hilarious. And so yeah, that's when I guess thought of the idea of doing stand up, but at the same time I didn't know how to. I was like, I don't know if I could come up with my own stuff. So my original dream, because I grew up in a trailer park, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. That's all I ever wanted to be. And those guys, when you grow up in a trailer park, those guys are our idols. Those are our heroes. Those are our, Neil Armstrongs and Obamas. If you're in a trailer park, it's The Rock and Macho Man and all those guys. So
who's your favorite wrestler? Just out of.
Oh, my favorite wrestler is Shawn Michaels. That was my favorite. But okay. I got a bunch. I actually just rewatched Survivor Series 96 because they played it on Fox the other night because, there's no content. So they're showing old wrestling pay-per-views. So I'm digging that. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And then when I got out of high school, I was going to go have shoulder surgery because I was still going to try to be a wrestler. I got bad shoulders. And got the MRI, and I had this surgery scheduled, and they told me I was going to be in a sling for about 6 to 9 months, something crazy, like one of those with the stick underneath. And I'm like, well, I'm going to need something to do. And then I remembered that, I very much enjoyed stand-up, and that was always in the back of my head. So I looked up an open mic and signed up, and I went to it. I bombed in front of my friends and a few other people. And then I went and did it again, and then again, and then I ended up booking a little local show that would have interfered with my surgery. So I ended up canceling my surgery, and I still haven't got my shoulders fixed. I still have an arm that's longer than the other, and they hurt constantly. But that's how I got into stand-up.
But it's totally worth it.
Whatever success I have in stand-up, there's no way I would have gotten anywhere near it in the world of professional wrestling. So I'm really glad that it went the way it went.
if you had that cast, you could have been Cowboy Bob Orton again. You know, like
yes, I would have brought that back. Just like
absolutely.
Owen Hart brought it back in the mid-90s. I would have had the never healing arm.
Exactly. For those who have no idea what we're talking about, it was a wrestler who had this brace on his arm that from an injury, and it just never healed, and he wore it for decades. So
yeah, and used it as a weapon, and then he just had like a broken arm for like 10 years or however long he used it.
Yeah. So you're talking about that first open mic show that you did. Tell us a little bit about the very first show you did.
The first venue I performed at, it wasn't the Comedy Store, because this was back in 2006. Like, the San Diego scene is really great. We have 4 full-time clubs, a 5th one up in Escondido, and a bunch of rooms. But it wasn't like this back when I started in 06. We had the Comedy Store, and maybe Lestat's. Lestat's was running on Tuesdays, and then they had an open mic on Mondays. But there wasn't a lot of places to get up, and there was a place called the Comedy Co-op. Did you ever get a chance to go to it?
I think, was it up in like Oceanside or Carlsbad or something?
No,
like that?
it was Sorrento Valley.
Okay.
So just inland from La Jolla, where all the business parks are. And that's what it was. It was a comedian who also ran a law website. But so he rented out this office space that had a garage in the back. I guess it used to be a mechanic shop or something before he took it over. And he wanted to go do stand-up. So he went to the Comedy Store, and he hated it. Like, he got made fun of by whoever was hosting that night. And he's like, this is stupid. So he opened the Comedy Co-op in spite of the La Jolla Comedy Store. So he had an open mic where he gave everyone 6 minutes instead of 3. And so I signed up for that one because it wasn't 21 and up, and I wouldn't have to wait outside. So I signed up for that one, and I brought like 6 or 7 of my friends, which is so stupid. I don't know why anyone would bring their friends to their first time trying any. Like, if it was your first time surfing, would you bring 6 of your closest friends to go sit on the beach and watch you drown? Like, why would you do that? You wouldn't bring your family and friends to watch you learn to play the guitar in your garage. Right. But here I am. I'm like, it's my first night doing stand-up, and I invite all my closest friends. And I bombed like you're supposed to on your first time. Like, I got some laughs, but they were in places I wasn't expecting a laugh, and all the places I expected a big haha, nothing. And that's how it went. And it was actually intriguing. Like, I actually thought I was going to do well at it. I was surprised when it didn't go well. And I just went in like a dumb 19-year-old with like all this, when you're 19, you have confidence for no reason. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I went into it with, this like dumb, naive confidence. And then I bombed. It brought me down. But then I was intrigued. I was like, well, why did I bomb? Why did this not go well? So I went back the next week, sucked again, and then just kept sucking for a while until finally, things started to get a little better. But that was the first show.
Wow. Yeah, it's usually a lot of people, like you said, will bring just a ton of people, and then they'll laugh at them regardless.
Right.
And then they go somewhere without their friends, and they get punched right in the face.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of had that, except minus the first set going great. My first set, I had my friends. It went poorly. And then the following sets, they stopped showing up, and they went just as poorly. So it was, there was less of a letdown that way. It's weird that something that goes that, I don't want to say that wrong, but when it goes wrong like that hooks you. Yeah. Well, because I was always comparing it to, I didn't really like school, but the classes I would get good grades in were any of the ones where I would be able to, where there was like a presentation in the class. Because my content of my presentation was never that good, but I'm able to talk in front of an audience, and I was entertaining enough to where those parts I would make eye contact, and my speech would be engaging and kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And so it would bring up the fact that my content was terrible. I had nothing to actually tell the class. And so I was thinking of that. I was like, well, this is going to be like giving a presentation in front of the class. I'll be able to do this. So I just went in like an idiot, and then it didn't work out.
Well, you had half the equation, being able to present it. You just need the material, which most people, it's amazing how many people forget that, I have material, but they have no presentation or no performance or stage presence. Right. And then, you go the opposite way, where they can come in and capture the audience, but have nothing to say. So
I was like, I had a lot of energy when I was young. I remember that a lot of the older guys that were there, and I was 19, so everyone was older than me. But a lot of the older people there were like, "Man, you have a lot of energy, but nothing really to say." And I'm like, they pretty much described me as like a crazy homeless person who's got wow, and you're like, "What are you saying?" I don't know, but I really mean it.
That's right. And in 6 minutes, when you don't know what you're doing, is that, I mean, it doesn't sound like a long time. That's a long time on stage.
Yeah, and I stayed on one topic for 6 minutes. I didn't know you were supposed to like jump around. So I talked about immigration. I talked about how we should be looking out for the Canadians sneaking in, not Mexican people.
Wow.
So, and I talked about that for 6 whole minutes. Like I brought up Celine Dion raking up our American dollars with her Canadian rake. I remember that was like the only line that I really remember from that whole 6 minutes.
You know, what would be interesting is if, and I know I don't have a copy of mine because mine was from 97. Actually, technically it was 91 with my very first set. And then I did it for like 6 months and then I stopped doing it. And then I went back in 97 and I've been doing that ever since. But it'd be interesting to like go back and take your very, very first set and those premises and seeing if you could change them and punch them up into something today.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I mean, here we are, 15, 14 years later, immigration is definitely still an issue. Right now it's fallen behind, racial injustice and COVID, but it's still up there. So yeah, it'd be interesting to go up there and see if I could poke fun at the Canadians and have people go along with it.
Yeah.
I think that topic's been beaten to death about looking out for Canadians, but come at it from a different angle.
Exactly. And because people always say, oh, that was, my early stuff was awful. And it's like, well, the premises weren't necessarily awful. The premises are still funny to you. It's just you're much better now technique wise and your voice, and you know how to make things funnier. So sometimes when people get stuck for material, I say, hey, go back and look at your old stuff and see if you can just rework it and rebrand it and go at, like you said, attack it from a different angle. So
I like that advice too. I do that too. Sometimes if I have nothing really new to say, I'll go through my little notebook of ideas and I'll find like a story that I've been trying to work on that just is missing pieces to try to ramble through that. And then maybe you'll fall into something. Right.
So how long did it take for you and how much were you getting up before things started to like click for you on stage?
I was getting up. So I was in the beginning, I was only really going to the Comedy Co-op, which is every Thursday. And then what they did was on Saturdays. So their open mic on Thursday was like a competition. And then the top three would get extra time on the Saturday open mic. So there was a time where I would do 6 minutes on Thursday. And then there was I had a good streak of like winning the open mic. And then so I would get 12 minutes on Saturday, and I would try to do like different sets on those shows. So it was like 18 minutes a week on just there. And then slowly I started to I was showing up at the Comedy Store, but that place always intimidated the hell out of me. But yeah, that's where I was going up. And I feel like I remember the first show that it felt like it clicked, and by clicked, I mean like, oh, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Was a show in Encinitas at the it's a place that's not even there anymore. It's a place called the Artist Colony. There was a bunch of artist bungalows that artists could rent and sell their work, and then they had a main clubhouse, and they ran a monthly show there by a guy named Bob Murphy. You know Bob Murphy.
Yep, that's what I was thinking of when you said Comedy Co-op. That's the one, the Artist Colony.
Oh, you were thinking of the Artist Colony.
Yeah.
So those are the two. I performed at those two venues a lot, and I think the first time I worked the Artist Colony, and I have video of this set. It's hidden on YouTube. I'll never show it to anybody. But but there was a moment in there where I told a story, and it got a really good reaction, and it got a way better reaction than the other jokey jokes that I was kind of doing or attempting to. And I was like, oh, maybe that's my thing. I'm more like, I have to tell more stories and little quips of stuff that's actually happened to me, and not, my hilarious condom joke or something. You know what I mean? Like whatever I was trying to do at the time. And I remember that was one of the first big moments where I was like, oh, I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when that happens. Did you have this happened to me when I was on stage? Do you ever just stop and go, wait? At one point I was on stage and I go, wait a minute. Everybody here is listening to me. and they're waiting for what I say and they're reacting to me. I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you where you just, and you're on stage and I was just like, this is bizarre.
I actually had that moment happen to me recently. It was during the lockdown, and I was this whole thing has like taught me that I'm not the person that I thought I was. Like if you had asked me who I was 4 months ago, I would have told you, oh, I'm kind of like an introvert who, you know, I enjoy company I have like a time limit with people. Like I can maybe hang out with them for a couple hours and I need my alone time. But that's not who I am. Apparently I'm a people person because I didn't take into account like all the times I go on stage. That's how I like to interact with people.
Right.
Which is totally narcissistic. That's how I like to talk to people. I want to be on stage. They have to shut up and listen to me. And then you can react with laughter, but that's it. And that's how I realize that where I'm like, oh, that's how I get my social interaction and so I actually love people. I just don't love them to talk or give their opinion. I want them to listen to me, give mine, which is a horrible thing to learn about yourself. But it kind of relates to that where you're like, oh, that's what I like about this. I like all these people sitting here and listening to me.
Nice. That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know what that says about my childhood, but it definitely says something.
That's yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of like that too. You just sit there and I've been pretty comfortable in the lockdown, and then you just sit there. That's what I would do beforehand, was just stay kind of home, and then I would go, and that was my socializing with comedians or whatever, and then going on stage, and that was it. I don't need anything. So.
Yeah. And then I thought I enjoyed like the empty hotel rooms and all that stuff of being on the road. But it was like, yeah, but you got a whole hour of nothing but attention. And then, so yeah, after that, you're cool with being in a hotel room for the next, 20 hours until you have to do it again.
Right. But isn't it weird though, when you're on stage in front of 300, 500, however many people, have a great time, you get that adrenaline rush, and then 20 minutes later, you're sitting in a hotel room alone. Like,
yeah, it used to be weird to me, and then it got to be very normal. Like in the beginning, it used to be very hard to like come down. Like, ooh, I want to go. And sometimes it still feels that way, where sometimes you just have a really good set and you're like, man, I want to go out and hang with my friends and drink and celebrate because you're feeling up.
Yeah.
But I think the more I've done it, the more I can quickly go back to the hotel, be in bed, and Netflix is fired up. Nice. The girl I'm seeing, she was very surprised at that. She came to a show, I think in Florida or Dallas. I forget where it was, but it wasn't long after I was off stage. We were both tired, and we were just both back at the hotel, and we were watching Netflix. And she's like, "You're not up anymore?" And I'm like, "No." And she goes, "You had a good set?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I felt like I had a good set, but it wasn't anything I can't sleep off,
Right. Right. So what was the best piece of advice you received about comedy?
I think one of the best pieces it wasn't given to me, it was given to everybody, is the last episode that Conan O'Brien did on the Tonight Show. Do you remember that? When he got kicked off NBC because they gave it back to Leno, and he gave the speech on cynicism and how he's against people that are cynical of others in the world of art or comedy or whatever, because he was saying it accomplishes nothing. And the whole point of his speech, he was saying, he was like, I'm not funnier than anybody, but I'm nice and I'm likable, and people liked being around me, and I eventually got this job. And the gist, he had a great line in there that I'm going to butcher, but the gist of it was, if you're just a good person and you work hard, you'll be surprised where you end up. And I like that message it's such a great message, because there's so much, inner community drama in stand-up and all that. I'm sure in every community, I'm sure if we got into acting, there'd be a personal drama there, but a lot of it doesn't matter. Oh, I don't like this person, I don't like that person. You're like, dude, we're coworkers. And essentially we're coworkers in a business where it's about us. We're in a business of us. Right. And these are just people we work with. So yeah, there might be people you don't like, but you don't have to tell them you don't like them. You can just work with them. You don't have to have lunch with them. You don't have to be cynical about them behind their back either. So I think that was the best piece of advice, where I was like, man, everyone listen to that. Listen to that and worry about yourself, and worry about being really funny on stage in a good way, and be nice, and then good things will come. Sometimes they take longer than other people. Sometimes people get them quicker than you do. But if you stick with it and you're actually good at it and you're not a horrible person, it will eventually come.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And it was one of those things. I used to be very much so that, arms folded. I started in Boston, which was a very competitive, very cutthroat.
Yeah. It's an
market.
edgy city. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very, you have that just built in, and it was like, there are only so many spots. And so you're rooting for people to fail, and you're rooting for, and it's just not a great way to live. Then I got sick and my perspective kind of changed. Like, yeah, maybe, I don't need to be that way, and I truly believe it now. And so I apologize to everybody for ever, doing that. But
it's what it is. It's, if I came up in that scene, I would have been just like you.
Yeah.
It's all in whatever you come up in. And it's because of the Comedy Co-op. If I had been a Comedy Store guy, I would have been as cynical and as mean to every new comic that came in as is still common today.
Right.
That's not where I came up. At the Comedy Co-op, we were so lucky to have an audience that we wanted all the comics on the open mic to do well so they didn't leave and they would come back. So it was in our best interest that you have a good set and I have a good set and that person has a good set, so we can still keep building and keep doing this thing that we love. So instead of trashing a guy because they suck, instead you pull them off to the side and you go, hey, why don't you try this?
Right.
It was a little bit of it was like a kind of a positive community at the Comedy Co-op, which I know is very anti-stand-up. But that's kind of what I came up in.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. Well, at least that was not my experience. I'll say that. Yeah, I was very fortunate that I had
the experience at the Comedy Store, but the Comedy Store was a built-in institution where audiences would show up and they kind of didn't need you to do well because they're like, well, I'm going to do well.
Right.
So it was just a matter of circumstance. I mean, this was the comedy club I would work at was in a office, park. Nobody stumbled upon this place. All right. People that were going there because they're going to this, and we didn't want to lose them. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. There was a headliner who, I was a zero threat to him. And I was very lucky because he got a DUI and needed someone to give him a ride to his venues. This is before Uber and all that. So he was next town over. I was like, I'll do it. And so he just took me along. I got to pick his brain. He had been doing it 25 years at that point. So I got to just really pick his brain. He introduced me to, people, got me into doors that I wouldn't have had opened. And, and I remember that. And now it's one of the things I try to do is like, I'll go to the open mics, whether it's at the Comedy Palace or certain places. And if I see somebody, as long as you get on stage and you try, you have my respect. Anyone who gets up, whether they're good or bad, provided hopefully you're a decent person, that makes it better. But, like that. But I'll try to pull them aside, go, hey, what about this and this and this, and try to just give back a little that way. And I think it's just really important, like you said, just to have that support and be a nice guy. Man. And I truly believe this now, that there's room for everybody, because people would always sit there and go, oh, he has a guitar, headliner helper. He does, impressions. Oh, she does prop comedy. Like there's room and an audience for everybody. Yeah. So
the audience doesn't care. The audience isn't sitting there going, oh, a guitar act. They're like, oh, this is different. And then that person's going to destroy. Take it as a challenge and go, are my jokes going to hold up? Like, let's say you have to follow the guitar act, right? Right. Or a prop actor, whoever you're looking down at. Challenge yourself. Go, all right, can I top this? Right. And I remember one time I was working in Vegas. And I've always struggled in Vegas. It was my first time working a full week at a comedy club. And there I was. And I'd been struggling all week. And we're coming now, it's Saturday. And there was a comic magician who was going to do a guest set before me because I was featuring that weekend. And this is how his set ended. He was on a giant 8-foot unicycle with a sword. And he stabbed a deck of cards. All the cards fall except for one at the tip of the sword. And that's the card that someone in the audience picked. I mean, beyond a standing ovation, he destroyed. And then I had to go on after that. There's cards everywhere, and people just saw Cirque du Soleil mixed with comedy, mixed with magic. And I'm like, I have to follow this with my words. And I said that. I was very honest. And I ended up having a good set. I didn't have a better set than they did, than the magician comedian person. But I still stuck in there.
Yeah.
And I think you learn from those situations. And those little situations make you a little better.
Yeah. What comics make you laugh? It can be well-known or it can be unknown comics to most people.
I really like... as a comic, I used to be in the scene here. He's up in LA now, but Billy Bonnell makes me laugh all the time.
Yeah.
If he ever posts a clip, I'm watching it, and there's a good chance I'm watching it 5 times.
Yeah.
Something about it, like he could just read a phone book and be funny to me. It's just the way he talks, the way his vibe is on stage, the way he's just the way him. I'm a fan of him, and his material is really funny on top of that too. But he would be my pick of like a non-famous comic that people like. And then like a famous comic I like watching, I mean, other than the obvious ones like Chappelle and stuff, who I'm very much a fan of. Burr, Segura. I really like Nate Bargatze. A lot of people are liking him now. Like they're getting to know who he is now. He's been funny for a long time. I like Mark Maron. I don't know, there's a bunch. But yeah, I'm really into him.
Nice. I was wondering if you could describe a little bit, because I think you're such a prolific writer. What is your writing process like?
Yeah, I wish there was much of a process. I talk to myself all day, like in my head. And so it's been less now that there's been a lockdown. I've only done 4 sets in the last 2 weeks since it's been coming back. But usually... I keep a little notebook. I also have my notes app in my phone, and I'll have an idea. Like I'll jot something in there, and then I'll think about it in my head. Like if you looked at the note, it would just say, I didn't like avocados when I was 7. And you're like, what does that mean? But the bit in my head is like, which I still haven't done on stage, but this is my process. The bit I'm having in my head is the people that believe Black Lives Matter. They just don't like the title of it, and they want to call it All Lives Matter. Those people just remind me of being 7, not liking avocados because they're green, and green reminded me of vegetables. So like, I'm not even against them. They're just like judging a book by the cover. They're like, I don't like the title, but it's like, you might like the context. You're like, what if it's the best book on the planet, but the cover says, I hate Zoltan Kaszas. And you're like, well, I'm Zoltan Kaszas. I'm going to hate this book. And you're like, no, but you got to read the insides. Like, what does it mean? And that's kind of the idea I'm thinking of. So I keep thinking about it. I think about it in the shower. I think about it when I drive. I think about it when I went for my walk for coffee today. And that's kind of my process. And if things were normal, I'd be going on stage tonight talking about it. And then hopefully trying to figure it out.
Do you record your sets?
I do. Usually on my phone, audio. I just like set the recorder. It's funny. My first set back was 2 weeks ago up at Adams Club in Escondido. And I was so nervous from not doing a set for 3 months. Not only did I not record my first set back, but I also didn't put it on airplane mode. And I forgot how to take the mic out of the mic stand. It was like it was a disaster. The set went well, but there's no recorded evidence of it. But yeah, I usually record the set, and then that really helps with new jokes, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, and because you're scared and excited about this new bit, you'll say something in a way you didn't think of beforehand, or maybe the punchline you thought would work doesn't work. Now you're back on your heels and you blurt something out that ends up being really funny. And it's not just what you say, but how you say it, as you know. And sometimes you have to go back and listen to that and go, how did I deliver that it worked on Saturday and then didn't work on Sunday? And so that's why it's important to record yourself, even though it's brutal to have to listen to yourself.
It is. I think that's the worst part of comedy, is listening to yourself or watching yourself back. It's so important. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And if you stop focusing on what you sound and look like, with the exception of facial expressions or body positioning or anything like that, but you just focus on the words and the concept of it, then it becomes a little easier to kind of judge and critique.
Absolutely.
Isn't it funny though that you get so rusty? I mean, I get rusty if I'm not on stage in like a week. I haven't gone back yet because I'm still I'm technically one of the vulnerable, history of asthma and all that sort of stuff. So
Right.
I'm being a little more cautious about going back. And I can't even imagine how rusty I'm going to be after 3 months, 4 months, or however long it is.
I didn't know how to start. I don't even, I was like, what did I do in the beginning? I did all the stuff I wanted to talk about, like all the COVID stuff and the protest stuff. And then once I ran out of that, because I was doing like 20 minutes or 25 minutes, once I ran out of that, I was going back to the jokes I was doing before the lockdown happened. And a lot of them, I forgot the wording of it. There was a couple where I went into the jokes where I'm like, in my head, I'm going, oh no, I don't remember the punchline. And then a couple of them, I stumbled back into it. Like I found the punchline again just by saying the words leading up to it. And I was like, made it out of that one. But there was a couple where I just didn't remember the punchline. I was like, this used to have a punchline. And, that would, like, the audiences have been forgiving because we've been upfront with them going, hey, this isn't like riding a bike.
Right.
We used to do this, 5 to 7 nights a week, and we used to be really sharp and bam, bam, bam. And then now we're like some heavyweight boxer coming off the couch. We're going to be a little pudgy until we get back into fighting shape,
Isn't that, I was going to ask you about that. Do you have your stuff written down? Because like you said, when you do it 5-7 times a week, you don't need to, because it's just burning in your brain and, it's memorized. And then you go away from, even if it's just a bit that you haven't done in a while, you go, oh, I used to have a tag there. What was that tag?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that's why the recording of your sets is so important. But I don't so some comics word out their bits every word, like in a notebook, word for word. That's not really how I do it. And the reason I don't do it that way is because if I start looking at a piece of paper with all the words written out, all the ands and thes and every tag and everything, for me, when I go on stage, I start performing it like I'm reading it instead of saying it. So it kind of messes me up.
Gotcha.
And so to keep myself conversational, I don't write all the words out, and I leave it kind of rough. Like I have the punchline and I have the setup, especially if it's a new joke. I'm like, well, I think this is the punchline and I think this will be the setup. And then the stuff in between, I'm like, well, we'll just get there. And especially if a joke is new, I try to get to the funniest part of the joke as quickly as possible to see if it's good. And then if it's good, then we slowly start putting the stuff in the middle, stretching it out, maybe adding stuff at the end.
Right.
But the base bones of it, we got to find out, is this idea funny?
Yeah. So it almost sounds like, and I do this a lot too, I'll start with the punchline first. When you see something, and then I go, how can I get to there as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
And that same thing. So it's almost like working backwards, where a lot of people will go, they'll have their setup and they go, oh, I need a punchline.
Yes.
And I'm more like, oh, I have this punchline. How do I get there?
Right. No, that's kind of the way I do it. I'm like, I think this is funny. And then I just try to get to it as quickly as possible. And then the more times I say it, the more time other little wrinkles start coming in. And then my favorite is when you have like a line that you like, it just doesn't have a home. Like for a couple of years, I had this line about museums where I'm like, this is the most fun anyone's ever had at a museum, where you just walk around and look at stuff and go, huh. And I remember one time I said it at Lestat's and nobody laughed, but Caleb Sinan, who's a comedian I'm a big fan of, was off to the side and he laughed at just that little notion. And I don't remember what joke it was in context to. Maybe it didn't even have one. I just said it on its own. He was like, there's something there. And then later I did this, like 2 years after that, I came up with this joke about the Harry Houdini Museum, because I went to a Harry Houdini Museum in Wisconsin. And then that little line fit right in there. And I was like, hey, it took 2 years, but this dumb little line that could never live on its own and never really fit anywhere, it found a little home. And those are the parts that get me excited.
Have you ever thought of maybe just doing a small section of your set going, here are some random thoughts?
Yeah.
And just kind of throwing it in there so that you don't have to, almost like Stephen Wright-ish.
Right. That would be a fun idea. I don't know if it would fit my style, or maybe it would, but I've never really tried it that way. But as soon as you said it, it reminded me of a comedian I started with. He's still a good friend of mine, Stuart Swanson. He kind of did that, where at the end of a set, he would go, here are some words that don't go together. And that was the concept of the thing. But I think the way he built that idea initially was what you were talking about, where it's like these little pieces that don't have homes. Why don't we put them together, almost like non sequiturs and random lines, and it became really funny. It was a fun way for him to close the set.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing, especially when it's, that's one of the things that I've been thinking about during this lockdown is what else can I try in my act that's different that I haven't necessarily done before, just to, another challenge.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for everyone's got that bit, whatever it is. For me, it's a story of meeting Jean-Claude Van Damme when I was a kid that I've been trying for years to get the right, like, it just doesn't work. It's a good story. Like, it's a fine story to tell somebody, but it just doesn't, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Maybe one day it'll work out, but that's one of those things I've been working on the lockdown going, how do we make this really entertaining all the way through?
Dude, that's my Simpsons story of auditioning for the 20th anniversary special right as I got facial paralysis. I have this whole story about having to go on camera with my face just frozen on half of it, and just
it was a Bell's palsy, right?
It was it's called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, which part of it is the palsy. It's it's misdiagnosed a lot. It just comes with some other aspects of it, some balance issues and that sort of thing. So but yeah,
Bell's.
Yes, it's that's why I say in my act it's like the collector's edition, and it's just all these, so it's facial paralysis plus hearing loss plus vision loss plus vertigo plus loss of taste and all these other crazy things, and
it's a collection of everything you wouldn't want.
Exactly.
When you're doing a TV thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was, I have the story, and it's great, and it's embarrassing, and it's funny, but I just can't get it to work.
Yeah.
And it's just, you just go, all right, well, I'll just keep that as a story on the side. So
right. Yeah. It's just going to be this thing that I have that hopefully one day will work. But as of right now, cats, or whatever's working.
And it's funny because there's so many things, like someone could go to you or, hey, tell it, write something about the moon landing. And you'd be like, sure, I can do that. Or, all these things. And we can take so many different ideas from out of nowhere, but then this one thing we go, oh, this is amazing here, and you just stare at it.
Yeah. They're just like, nope,
not at all. So speaking of not at all, what is the worst show you've ever had?
Oh, I've had a lot of them. I really have. The one that always comes up for me, and I will burn down Penn State Harrisburg one day. I'm putting it out there. If one day Penn State Harrisburg catches on fire, it was me. All right, don't bother looking. It was me. Just find out where I am and go get me. It was me. It was in 2015, and that was the year I got to quit my day job because I booked a lot of colleges. I went to NACA and it went really well, and I booked all these colleges. So I was on this long college tour for like 4 months. I would come home for like a day or two and then leave again for like 3 weeks and come home for a day. It was crazy.
Right.
And so this is the whole lead up. The night before Penn State Harrisburg, I'm at Washington Jefferson College outside of Pittsburgh. I show up. It's a small room and there's like 10 students there. And I'm like, that's cool. I can perform for that. And the person in charge of the show was like, hey, can we wait a few more minutes? Because I think more people are coming. And I'm like, cool. We wait a few more minutes. No one else shows up. And those 10 people that were there left because the show didn't start. And so the person that was in charge, she was a student. And she goes, oh, I am so sorry. Here's your check. And then I didn't have to do a show. And I remember like grabbing the check and looking at her going, never apologize for this.
Yeah.
I get to go back to the Marriott bar and go have dinner and drinks. And I just got this check for nothing. This is great. Next night, I'm at Penn State Harrisburg. I walk into a similar situation. It's like a big cafeteria kind of thing that goes on forever. It's huge. And then in the corner is a stage and a microphone, a poster of my face with my name misspelled, but nobody in that sitting area at all. There isn't anyone forever. And I'm like, this is great. I'm going to get another check again, and I'm going to be drunk at the Marriott bar. This is wonderful. I'm living the dream. And just as I'm having that thought, the young student who's in charge of that show, she was not nice. She just looks at me and goes, well, we paid you. And I was like, what does that mean? And she goes, get up there. And I'm like, there's no one here. And she made me go on stage, this horrible person. I don't wish ill on anybody, but I hope she's gotten a lot of flat tires in the last 5 years. She deserves a lot of flat tires. I hope every time she gets in a car, she just goes, again? Like, that's how many flat tires she deserves. So I have to go on stage. There's nobody there. And by the way, I have to do an hour. Not 45 minutes, 60 minutes. 60 whole minutes. And I'm on stage. There's like 3 students way I can't even see their faces. That's how far away they are. And I beg them to come up to the front. I'm like, please sit in the front. I promise, like, there's going to be a prize at the end. There's no prize. The prize is me trying to leave with my dignity. And the 3 students come up and sit in the front, and I'm doing my show as best as I can. And about 15 minutes in, one of the students gets up to leave. And as they're pushing the double doors open, I go, what was it? What happened? Was it the cat jokes? Just trying to say anything, you know? Mm-hmm. And as they're pushing the door open, they just look at me and they go, ugh, I just can't. And then he opened the door and walked out. That was 15 minutes into 60. I had 45 more minutes to do in front of these 2 other kids that now can't leave. Like, they feel like they can't leave.
Right.
And I still think of that set, and Penn State Harrisburg will burn to the ground one day.
That is hysterical.
Yeah.
For people who aren't comedians, what is it like trying to do an hour or for like 2 people? Like, it's
a lot of crowd work.
Yeah.
It's mainly crowd work. Yeah, it's mainly interviewing the audience. It's I talk about this all the time. I mean, this might be a little too inside business, but anytime someone books me for a private event, I ask for a lot of money, like more than I think they would be willing to spend. Mm-hmm. And usually they go, ooh, that's slightly out of our budget. And I'm like, well, what is your budget? And then usually their number is like half of what I asked for. And I go, okay, well, how about this? Instead of doing 60 minutes or 45 minutes, I do 30. And they go, that's great. Because they're like, we still get 30 minutes. And the reason I do that is because there's a big difference between bombing at a private event for 30 minutes and mm-hmm. bombing for 60. Like 30 minutes, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's bright. Like, right. I could bomb in my sleep in 30 minutes. Like, that's easy. I won't even hurt my feelings. But bombing for 60, even bombing for 45, you can still kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. But 60, bombing for 60 feels like an eternity. It feels like how long this year has felt. That's how long it feels to bomb for 60 minutes. Like, you feel like you need your beard trimmed halfway through. Like, you need a haircut. You need everything. So that's kind of what I do. And then if the company or the private event does give me the dumb number that I asked for, I'm like, well, at least if I have to bomb for 60 minutes, I'm being disgustingly overpaid. So this is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, always negotiate to the moon and then settle for less money and then less time.
Really good advice.
For all you kids out there, that's how you negotiate a private event.
Because private events generally are terrible.
And that's exactly why. Like, private events, whether it's a company Christmas party or some kind of community event or a fundraiser, they can be really bad. And honestly, those places don't need more than 30 minutes.
Right.
Even if it's not a bad show. Every time I've done it, once I get to the 30-minute mark, I'm like, man, they would be so happy if I just ended now.
Right.
They want me to do 15 more minutes or God forbid another 30, you know?
Yeah. And it just makes it better for everybody. It's better for you. It's better for them. And then it's because also when you're doing that and if it's a smaller crowd, you're burning through more material anyway, just because of, and it's so you may be doing 30 minutes, but you might be doing 45 minutes of material.
Yeah. Depending on how good or bad the show is, you might be ripping through some really some serious material there. And I also bombed on a cruise ship. That was I'm sorry, you were about to say something.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I'm thinking of every bad show now. I bombed on a cruise ship in January or November. I forget when. It was one of the last cruise ships I did before everything went to hell. It was a bunch of Brits. So I was meeting the ship in Florida. Or Boston. I don't know where. But the ship was coming across the Atlantic from the UK, so it was all British people. Now, if you guys don't know anything about British people, they're a horrible crowd to entertain. They like dry, wordy comedy. They don't like anything with personality. just like their food. They're a cold. And I have fans in the UK, and they're good people. And I did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for a whole month, and I found out how to perform for them. I found out how to adjust to perform for them. But that was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and here I am on the ship, and I know I'm going to bomb. And I walk out on stage to do my first half-hour set, and 10 minutes in, nothing. I'm hitting them with the best I got, and they're nothing. And the only laugh I got was this line that I said, because everyone was in tuxedos and gowns, because it was formal night on this stupid ship. And after bombing for 10 minutes, I looked at him. I go, you know what's funny about this? You guys are all in your tuxedos. You guys all look like you were dressed like you just came from a funeral, and now you're watching another one. And then that got a giant applause break from this big theater full of people. And in my dumb head, this goes to show you how you learn nothing in your career. In my dumb head, I go, I got him. This is like the moment where I turn the set, and now we're off to the races. Wrong. I went right back to bombing. They just like that one part where I acknowledged that I sucked, and then I went back to like try to be entertaining again. Like, no, we still hate you. We just like that you brought out the fact how much we hate you.
Instead of just saying goodnight.
Yeah, instead of saying goodnight. And then I had to do another show for him 2 days later, and I begged like the production manager. I'm like, who's this for? Why do we have to do this? They hated me. I hate them. Just play a movie. Play a Chris Rock set or something. Play something better. And it was hell in a handbasket bad.
Wow.
So
for all you British people who are listening, send your hate mail to Zoltan ZoltanComedy.com.
There are Brits that like my stand-up, and they send me messages, and I will go out there to do a show eventually. But oh boy, it's going to take me a week to like figure out how they like it, and then do it that way. That's how the Edinburgh Fringe Festival went. It was a week of like rough sets, and then by the second week, I was like, oh, I kind of get what they're into.
Gotcha. So we're talking with Zoltan Kaszas. You can check him out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Zoltan, Zoltan Comedy, on YouTube at Zoltan Kaszas, Kasszas, and ZoltanComedy.com. Check out his Dry Bar Comedy special, www.drybarcomedy.com/Zoltan. And you actually also have a new special, Modern Male, which is out now.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's an hour. It's not, I filmed it. It was actually my album recording, which 800 Pound Gorilla is putting out on Tuesday. Or no, Tuesday is the Sirius XM. July 7th is the album release if you want the audio version. But the video version is on YouTube. And it's doing really well. We made it over 500,000 views a couple days ago. It's been up for a couple months, so I'm really happy about that. I like it when, like in the search bar, I put in comedy full special, and like my dumb face is like amongst like a bunch of big comedians, and my views aren't that far off. So that part's exciting. So yeah, go watch that if you're into it.
So now, what is the biggest mistake that you see young comics make, or newer comics?
I think just getting into like drama on the scene really seems unnecessary, because it's not going to matter. And it's also not, I think it's a bad idea to just associate yourself with one club or one room, because that room can close. Like there's certain comics that are like, I'm a store guy, or I guess the store is a pretty safe bet. They're going to be around forever, but I'm a Madhouse guy. I'm an American Comedy Company guy. I'm a Comedy Palace guy. It's like, well, you should go do all the rooms, all the clubs, because San Diego is a really good test for how it's going to work on the road. Because San Diego is a good mix. Depending on the room you're working, it could be a little bit of a conservative crowd. It could be a real liberal crowd, depending on where you are in the city. So one night, when things are back to normal, one night I could be at Lestat's, which is all a bunch of college kids, and I can see how like PC culture would react to this joke. And then the next night, Wednesday night, I could be in PB in front of the party kids, see how they're into it. Thursday, I could be at Madhouse doing your show, where that's a clean show, and maybe the audience is a little more conservative, because Madhouse seems to pull like a little bit more of a conservative audience, I feel sometimes. So then you can test it there. So that's why I feel like don't get yourself in the scene drama, because all you're doing is limiting yourself from places to go perform that actually help you grow because you're in front of a different audience. Don't just perform in front of the people that you know already like you, because what's the point of that?
Right. Challenge yourself.
Yeah, challenge yourself. And then it's easy to make people laugh that already agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now go word your political or social viewpoint joke in a way that makes someone laugh that you know disagrees with you. That's my favorite thing. One of my favorite things is like if someone comes up to me after a show or leaves a YouTube comment or something where I'm like, I know I don't agree with this guy politically or we don't vote the same way, but that's funny.
Yeah.
That's the best. I mean, there's entertaining people that I know agree with me is fine, but I don't know. It's playing T-ball.
Right. Yeah. Or if you're not comfortable, if you've never been in front of an all black crowd, go do an all black club.
Yeah. Go do an all black crowd.
Do that. Or if you're not comfortable in front of people who are 60 or 70, go do that. Like, go, if you're not comfortable in front of college kids, go do that. Like, challenge yourself, and it just makes you a much better comedian, makes you more well-rounded, and just absolutely. So now you're kind of transitioning out of clubs now.
I'm trying to. I think that's still going to be a couple more years, but I'm really into setting up my own shows. I started doing that 2 years ago, where instead of going to a comedy club and working at a door deal, which I still do, but I find it much more satisfying to go rent out the venue or work out some kind of door deal with the venue directly and then promote it yourself, sell your own tickets on Eventbrite or brown paper tickets, whatever you're into. And you get to keep all the profits. You perform in front of your audience. There's no one there that got free tickets. These are all people that already love you. And it's a magical feeling. It's the best. It's so fulfilling. There's no check drop. There's no late show. You do your show. You leave like a king. You're like, this is amazing. And then you go have dinner and you're back at the hotel. And that's what I want to do. So instead of like, hopefully I can pull this off in the next 3 to 5 years. But, depending on when things go back to normal. But ideally in 3 to 5 years, I'm not working at comedy clubs unless I'm in town working on material or I've done like a complete door deal with them. But that's kind of where I see myself going, hopefully.
Nice. Now, just to touch on something, you mentioned check drop. For those who maybe aren't comedians, what is that and how do you deal with that when you're on stage?
So the check drop is all those foods and drinks you've been buying because they all have 2 drink minimums or food item minimums. Those checks get dropped about 30 minutes or 15 minutes left in the comedian set, depending on the club you're working at. They're all different. But the reason it's annoying is because they all kind of happen at the same time and you lose the audience's attention for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how quick they are in processing it. And if you're headlining a traditional club, it's not that big of a headache because you're doing at least 45 minutes or 60. Mm-hmm. And so let's say they start dropping the checks 40 minutes into your set or 30 minutes into your set. The audience already likes you. So you're not trying to win them over. And then you lose their attention, then they come back later and you close strong. So there's still a 10-minute gap where no one's listening to you. But let's say like the Madhouse. Over there, they do more of a showcase style. So the headliner's doing 20 to 30 minutes somewhere in there. So they drop the checks as you're being announced on stage. So your first 5 to 10 minutes, you might as well be farting on a snare drum to steal a line from Airheads. Like it doesn't matter. They're not listening to you. And then slowly you're gaining their attention back. But you don't have the rapport with them because you just went on stage. So it's just a real headache. And I really don't like it. And I honestly don't like late shows either. It's not fun. I don't want to do them. I already did this. Why? Yep. I feel disingenuous doing the same material twice. It doesn't feel as natural. It doesn't feel as good. And really, if I'm on the road, I want to do a 7 or 8 o'clock show, be done at 9 or 10 o'clock, whatever. And I want to go experience your town. I want to go out and grab a drink, grab dinner before everything shuts down at 2 a.m. or whatever your curfew is. So I don't like check drops. I don't like late shows. And that's why I'm trying to phase out of comedy clubs and just rent out my own venues.
So for aspiring comics, what do you do when the check drop happens? How do you engage? And you can't just stand there for 10 minutes while that happens.
Usually I do material that I'm okay with it being ignored.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a tough example, but like
that's what I do. I do too.
I'm like, well, these are the jokes I don't love as much, so they're going to be sacrificial tonight, and I guess I'll do these here now. I'll like notice it because I don't know when they're going to drop the checks, but you can see it from stage. Right. You're like, oh, okay. Oh, I see what's happening. And then I acknowledge it. I usually do some dumb joke about not being able to figure out the tip. And then here's a couple burner jokes. And then I go, is everyone back? Cool. And then you wrap up to finish.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Because I've seen some people just try to go in and talk to the audience during that point. And I'm just like, I just rather just keep chucking along. And it's
tough. It's tough. I mean, that's one way to do it. You can talk to the audience. You can do your material. Either way, you still only have 50% of their attention because they're doing this.
Yep. And the worst is when it's
just a dumb setup. I don't know why clubs just don't do it at the end.
Yeah. Have something on screen or whatever, or at the club.
Just so that they got to show you they have to show their receipt to leave the club so you don't get screwed on, people skipping out on their checks.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. The worst is when they do it in waves. They just do like certain segments of the room and you're just like, can you please just drop them all so you're not extending this?
Yeah. Figure it out. I remember, I think someone told me that Brian Regan, when he was still working comedy clubs, but he was a draw, he had it in his rider that you couldn't drop the check for the first 5 rows until he was off stage. Because he wanted at least the people he could see. He wanted their attention at least while he lost the rest of the room for 10 minutes. That's not a bad idea either. I don't know. Come up with something. There's a better way to do it. I remember Flappers in Burbank for a while. They stopped doing it. But for a while, they would drop the check at the very end after the show was over. And I was like, what a beautiful thing. And then you had to show your receipt to leave the showroom at the end. But then they stopped doing that for some reason. Maybe it was like too hard to turn the room over for the next show. I don't know. But I really like that for the short time they were doing it.
Yeah, if you do that, then maybe just instead of going 90 minutes, make it 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So you still have the time to drop.
Yeah.
There's a way around it.
Shows in the States are long. Like in the UK, they're like 70 minutes or 60 minutes. They're shorter shows. People have less of an attention span over there.
So what have been some of the challenges for you as far as trying to like produce these independent shows and promoting and marketing?
It's a lot more work. So, if you're just going to work in a comedy club, you can do nothing and just show up and go do it if you're on a flat rate. Or if you're on a door deal, then you can set up in a Facebook event and put some money behind it, boost it, and plug it on all your social media. But if you're setting up your own venue, there's a lot more involved. Just finding a venue that in a city you've never been in, that could be a challenge. That's just a Google search and a bunch of emails. A lot of people don't get back to you. A lot of these venues are run by artists themselves, and you know how bad we are at getting back on emails. So that's a challenge. Just finding a venue is hard. Then asking them how much they're open to renting it for. Some places want $1 million for no reason, and you're like, just say no then. Just say you don't want me. And then other places are like, I don't know, $25, and you're like, great, it's all profit. Figuring out like how to promote it. And if that's the other stress, like you're going to check that Eventbrite app every day, multiple times a day, going, how many tickets are we at? How many tickets are we at? Like one that really made me nervous was Oakland. I did Oakland in November or October of last year, and the place sat 100. And I was like, yeah, let's sell this thing out. And then the show was on a Sunday, and the Monday before it, we were at 50 tickets. And I was like, what's happening? And then by the time Sunday came, we had like 110 people when we sold out that little room. So some markets, they buy tickets late. Mm-hmm. Some of them will buy it early, and you'll sell out your little venue 2 weeks before the show, which is awesome. But then some of them are really tough. Miami is a tough market. That was one of the last independent shows I put on. Miami was a tough market. I also put it on after Valentine's Day like an idiot. And it was a late show, 10 o'clock. That's pretty late for cat people. So but I was stuck for a venue, and that's what I had to do. So you kind of learn. You learn what markets are your markets. Like I sell well in Cleveland for some reason, and you kind of gravitate towards those, but it's a lot of trial and error. And it's important to take notes and go, this worked here. This is how many tickets I sold here. Don't get nervous about Oakland because they bought tickets late last time. So don't, stress about it. I don't know. All those little things. There's a lot more involved when you're putting on your own shows, but the rewards from it are a lot higher too.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely harder because a lot, like you said, a lot of people will wait until week of or a few days before to buy tickets, which is why for people listening, you always see a lot of people do those deals, buy before this date and it's this price. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. And it's not easy, but it's way easier to secure the venue and secure the date and all of that stuff. It's the getting the tickets sold is what's generally more work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, you're checking Eventbrite every 5 minutes. Like, where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at?
Where are we at? I mean, Miami was such a tough sell, and I had so many messages like of people saying I would have came to your show if you would have had it in Fort Lauderdale, which is like 30 minutes north. So it's almost like someone going, I live in Escondido, but you're doing this show downtown. I don't want to come.
Right.
And you're like, just get on the freeway. What's the matter with you? And but you have to learn that thing. So next time if I go into the Miami area, I'm going to do it in Fort Lauderdale instead. Apparently that's going to be easier.
Well, and for if a comic who travels, like that's nothing, especially when you do the road and you would drive. I would get up and do an 8-hour drive, do the show, get up the next day, do another 7-hour drive or a 10-hour drive or what. So you get used to that. So when someone's like, oh, it's 45 minutes away, and I'm like, awesome.
Yeah. It's so weird because there's like some people that are like, can't you be closer? This is a 30-minute drive. And then there's other people that come up to me after the show and they're like, we drove 4 hours to get here. And you're like, oh, I hope I did well. I hope that was worth it. Because I love Metallica, but I'm not driving 4 hours to see Metallica.
Right. I got a couple comedy questions left. One, of course, is going to be any funny audience stories that you might have. But do you have any tips for aspiring comedians?
Tips for aspiring comedians, kind of like what I said before about not getting too into interpersonal drama. This isn't high school. This is your job, or at least you're trying to make it your job, right? So try to treat it as such in the sense that you can definitely have friends in this business. I do. I love hanging out with them. I love seeing them. And then you're also going to have people in this business that you're not that close to, and maybe people you don't even like, but you never know where they're going to end up. They might end up booking something. They might end up owning a comedy club. They might end up working for Netflix. Be nice to everybody and get on stage as much as possible, especially in front of people you think won't like you. Make them laugh at your joke. Figure out a way to word it in a way that people that disagree with you like what you have to say and find it funny.
That's cool. That's very good advice. I'm going to plug your social media. The last question for comedy will be any funny audience stories. So if you need time to think on that. We're talking with Zoltan Kaszas, comedian, actor. You can follow him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Zoltan, Zoltan comedy, YouTube, Zoltan Kaszas, Kaszas, and www.zoltancomedy.com. You can check out his Dry Bar comedy special at drybarcomedy.com/Zoltan. And he's just all over the place, and he's a good follow, and you're definitely going to want to check him out. So have you thought of a funny audience story?
I don't know.
Have one?
Yeah, I have a couple. But yeah, this one used to be a closer for me. But one time I did a private event at American Comedy Company. They called me up day of, and they're like, hey, there's a birthday party. Do you want to come close it out? It's only 10 minutes. I'm like, sure. And I show up, and there's 9 people in there. It's only 9 people. It's for a lady's 50th birthday party, and they rented out the entire comedy club for 9 people. So it's brutal. They're sitting like in the 5th row in a line, like a firing squad, just like every comic going up, bomb after bomb after bomb. And then I go up, I'm bombing. And the only thing they told me before I went on stage is I will know that my time is up when I see a birthday cake coming up the side. And that's when I'm just supposed to stop and start singing happy birthday. That's how the show's supposed to end. And I'm like, that's horrible, but okay. They tell me this like as I'm walking up stage, and I'm like, okay. And so I'm on stage, I'm bombing. and I feel like 10 minutes is coming up. So I'm trying to wrap up my set, but I'm doing so poorly. So I'm trying to do like interaction with the audience or something. So I'm trying to get into my last joke. So I asked the birthday girl, I'm like, are you single or are you, in a relationship? And she was cool before, and now she's no longer cool. She like doesn't want to talk to me. She's like, I don't want to. And I was like, oh, easy. I'm not like trying to hit on you or anything. I thought that's what you meant. I'm just trying to get into this last joke. Are you single or are you in a relationship? And she's like, I don't want to. And then a huddle breaks out between her and her friends. Like it just gets quiet in this comedy club, and they're just like, and I'm like, what is happening? And then the birthday girl pops up out of the huddle and looks at me, and she goes, I'm a widow. And as soon as she says widow, here comes a birthday cake. So I just look at her and I'm like, and I just start singing a happy birthday. That was like one of the worst shows I've ever done. I'm still burning down Penn State Harrisburg, but that one's also on the list.
That's a great one. All right, we're going to switch really quickly to an organization that you wanted to spotlight today, and that was Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, I think for people that don't know what Meals on Wheels does, they deliver food at no cost to low-income people that are stuck at home, whether they're disabled or old or both. There are people that don't have family to take care of them. So this organization comes by and delivers, I don't know, thousands of meals every day. Like they do a lot of good, but they've been around for a long time, but they don't really pop up as much. Like it just seems like they're not a sexy organization to give to, and they do a lot of good for the community. So the reason I picked them is they were also the ones that I did, because I put my Our Modern Mail up on YouTube for free. The only thing I'd set up a GoFundMe with a link. So I was like, go donate to this. So at least there's some money being generated for something good. And so I picked Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, it's a great organization because nobody should go hungry.
In this country, we have so much food.
Exactly. And I know from personal experience, my mom is 81 years old and is currently living by herself, and she's back on the East Coast. So, we have set her up with Meals on Wheels, and they go and they every day and make sure that she's got something to eat and taken care of, and it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. And you can check them out at mealsonwheelsamerica.org. That's mealsonwheelsamerica.org. So check them out and donate if you can. If you want to do it through Zoltan's YouTube GoFundMe, you can, or you can just go directly to their site and do that. But I just want to say thanks to Zoltan again. One more time, you can follow him: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Zoltan Comedy, YouTube.com, Zoltan Kaszas, and ZoltanComedy.com. Also, drybarcomedy.com/Zoltan. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I want to thank you, Zoltan, for coming by and not coming by, but stopping on by. And my pleasure. And wish him nothing but the best. I can't speak. Wish you nothing but the best success going forward, and looking forward to working with you again soon.
Same to you, man. I can't wait to do a Thursday Madhouse with you again.
Sounds good.